We have with us the report on the land transport industry. As you would be aware that approximately about a year or so ago, we had, following a receipt of a number of complaints on various issues regarding LTA, including allegations of corruption within the LTA regime pertaining to the laws, etc., and very general process issues. The Ministry of Anti-Corruption had held public consultations throughout Fiji in all the major urban centers, in Suva, Nosori, Nasinu, Vanuatu, in Savusavu, Lambasa, Singatoka, Nandi, Latoka, Mba, all these major centers where we had consultation, including Raki. And from that set of consultations and following a review of some of the key issues, this report has been compiled. So today we have much pleasure in handing over this report to the Minister responsible, Honorable Tikoduadua, who is the Minister responsible for infrastructure and of course transport. There are a number of recommendations that have been made. These are not exhaustive, a list of exhaustive recommendations. This is a list of a summary of recommendations, and some of it, one of the key recommendations of course is to have a specialized team to delve further into specific areas regarding land transport and public service vehicles, for example. So this is what we have today, and Minister, I would like to hand this over to you.
Just a few comments. Thank you, Honourable Attorney General, and thank you for this report. I know this report has been in the wait for some time. We had a look at it in a few instances, and has already been made to the public. But I'm very happy this morning to have received this report, and I know there's a lot of work that has gone into it. I think the point that is made today, particularly the first recommendation that the Minister has alluded to, state that there needs to be some specialized work that needs to go into executing the outcomes of this report, and as it is not exhaustive, and it is also open to further recommendations and areas for opportunities and development. So that is what we are going to do. We ask for the public's understanding as we have received this report. I know there's a lot of anxious people out there, who want to start minibuses, taxis, carriers and all that. It's important that we find the best solution for Fiji, and that it needs to be something that that is integrated, that encompasses all of our public transport sector, and that it needs to be a lasting solution so that we don't keep changing and making all our decisions subjective. So we make a decision and then we stick by the decision for a period of time before we review it. So in the long term, that is what we want to do. So I hope that in the not very distant future, we believe we will be able to come back to the people, and particularly to Cabinet, in terms of the specific plan that we have put together to implement this particular study on the land transport sector and industry. So with those comments, I thank you, Honourable Minister, and your team for this report, and we've got work to do on it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
So you have mentioned about one of the recommendations is having a specialized team. Can you elaborate more on that? What exactly will that team do? What will be that?
You see, there are a number of issues. For example, in what we found, there are issues pertaining to, say, processes, which are quite easy to solve. Regarding, for example, at the moment, if you're a new car company that's going to register motor vehicles, there's no ability to have accounts. You have to always pay cash. So for example, Niranjans or whoever it is, right from that very basic kind of issue to issues such as, for example, taxi licenses, as the Minister referred to. So how many taxi licenses do you give? There's always people wanting taxi licenses. So how many do you give? Should it be based on the population size? So should you say, for example, hypothetically, should there be one taxi for every 200 people? So if the population of a town is 1,000, that means we'll have 5 taxis. So these are the kind of things that need to be worked out. We've given examples how some other countries have done that. So in terms of nutting that down, that needs to be looked at quite specifically. For example, at the moment in Fiji, if you go and you ask LTA, is there a national bus timetable? There is none. Absolutely none. You should be, most countries you go to, you can open up a bus timetable. What times do buses leave? So when you don't have a national bus timetable, when omnibuses, or the big buses we call it, when they come and apply for licenses or their new routes, there's always a lot of confusion, there's people complaining, there's judicial reviews that are taking place. So very simple things like that, what we are recommending needs to be obviously implemented. But in respect of other areas, there's a conflict in terms of enforcement. So some areas, like carriers are a classic example, may not be something peculiar to Suva, but most definitely is a common thing in the West, in Vanuatu. Sometimes they get booked by LTA, sometimes they get booked by police, sometimes they get booked by the municipal councils. It creates uncertainty, so people don't invest. So they don't go off and buy a new carrier. There are, for example, issues in Lautoka where people have what they call 7-seater buses or mini or taxis. On one side you have the carrier stands, the other side you have illegal 7-seater operators. So how do you solve the problem? We've identified the issues, we've given some suggestions, but in terms to embed it and nut it down and to assist the minister, he needs to have a good specialist team. We've recommended, for example, the processes within the board itself. So all of these things need to be looked at quite specifically. Some of the recommendations we made, for example, pertain to deregulation. In rental car companies, we're saying that LTA should not control as to how many rental cars should there be. At the moment, if you're an established rental car company, even if you want to add another 10 more rental cars, you have to get LTA's permission. We're saying, well, why should that be the case? It's like telling somebody if you have a shop, have only 2 shelves of flour, display only 2 shelves of flour and have only 1 shelf of tin fish. That shouldn't be the case. That's a business case for them. Obviously, if they don't hire the rental cars, that's a loss to them. But we should not be getting in the way because economic development is critical, investment is critical, and so we need to free up those spaces.
Actually, does the report highlight prevalence of corruption or corrupt activities within the sector?
It highlights that there are a number of allegations have been made, obviously. We don't have specific examples where there is corruption, but allegations have been made. It's something, of course, when we have allegations that are quite common and very frequent, obviously the minister will look at that, should anything come out of that. But I think a lot of it is to do with processes. If the processes aren't transparent, if you don't have proper transparent checklists, then of course you'll lead to corruption. When there's subjectivity. Very basic issues like you see sometimes LTA officers wearing mufti, stopping cars, identification, wearing sunglasses to all sorts of things and just shorts. The image is not good. People don't know whether they're actually LTA officers or not. So these are the types of things we're saying that needs to be looked at, and of course there needs to be inter-agency cooperation. You may sometimes be checked by the police and 2 kilometers down there's LTA, and then if you're lucky enough you might get municipal council when you get to the base. So these are the kind of things that needs to be inter-agency work, and that's obviously the specialist team's work.
Land Transport Authority as a whole, I understand that a number of issues were raised. As you alluded to, of course, some of the regulations of Land Transport Authority in terms of the carriers, they might not book the carriers, but then the municipal councils have been booking them for something that the LT has given them the green light to. And most of the sessions that you did have with your team, Land Transport Authority complaints about the authority in general had been #1 issue. So any specific recommendations regarding the authority?
Again, I think it goes back to ensuring that you don't have an over-bureaucratic approach to enforcement. And I think some of the provisions in the law may be a bit of an overkill.
Right.
And I think because you see the genesis of the LTA Act in Fiji was from Queensland. So I think we're trying to sort of fit in a law at times that does not really apply to Fiji. In Queensland they don't have carriers. They don't have rural taxis versus urban taxis. those kind of tensions do not exist. There may be a need to look at the entire sort of regime pertaining to public service transport. But also, the issue of who does the minister through LTA give a taxi license to? There are many complaints we received that people who have been taxi drivers for 15, 20 years, they've been applying to get a taxi license but they didn't get it.
Yeah.
But there are other people, other companies like supermarket stores, they just set up and they immediately got 10 taxi licenses. So who do they give it to? Should it be incomes based? A lot of people see a minibus as a source of income, a source of livelihood.
Yeah.
So these are the issues that we've highlighted, and then the minister will make a decision, get the team in, and that's what they'll need to do.
Yeah.